What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode, the final episode of the Gore Pirates Dynasty here on NCAA 14, and also featuring that Oklahoma high school football mod as well. We have officially made it to the mountaintop. We made it as state champions. We took a bottom feeding program to a state champion in less than 5 years. But the $1,000,000 question is, as I have something a little bit different for you guys. We're going to sim the next 3 to 4 seasons is, can we remain on top, or can we maintain that same level of success that we've had in gameplay? So, that being said, we have a very exciting final episode here. I hope you guys enjoy this one as we wrap this series up. With that being said, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, and if you enjoyed this series but you haven't hit that subscribe button, what are you waiting for, my man? I need you to go ahead, hit that subscribe button for me. But with that, let's go ahead and jump right into this. But we do have to go ahead and start with, some of our notable leaders, right, in terms of our stat gatherers this season. Tahoma Thompson, we got to start with him real quick. Tahoma Thompson quickly proved that he's one of the better quarterbacks in the state of Oklahoma. Tahoma threw for over 3,200 yards over the course of the season. He also ran for a good amount of yardage as well. He might have been almost our leading rusher, although RJ Valencia did end up being our leading rusher. In his senior year, he ran for over 1,300 yards. Hopefully that's good enough to get some college scouts' attention so that we do have a chance to actually have some FBS players possibly, or even lower division 1, 2, 3 players. You know what I'm talking about. As for Beef Wellington, he was our leading receiver here in year number 3. Beef Wellington did have close to 850 yards receiving. Jody Gentry wasn't too far behind. What we really strived for was our defense. We had one of the best defenses in the state of Oklahoma, and ultimately our defense did end up winning championships. Brand Danielson was actually surprisingly our leading tackler this season. He had 72 total tackles. But Porter Winstrid, Quadir Johnson, and Isaac Smith also found themselves in this top 5 in terms of solo tackles. For the sack guys, Chase Henry led the way with 21 sacks, and Samian Simmons also had 11 sacks as well, made for one of the most lethal combinations of pass rushing that the state of Oklahoma has ever seen. Finally, for interceptions, LaQuince Cobb actually led the team in interceptions this season. A good year for LaQuince Cobb. He did end up with 5 total interceptions on the year. And Jake Hills continues to grow as a kicker. He kicked a 48-yard field goal. Not known for the best leg, but he has one of the most accurate legs in the state of Oklahoma. He was automatic this past season. But what we do manage to get as a result of making it to a state championship is that we actually do get another extension. If this is a 5-year extension that takes us through the 2020 season, probably would be, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, for 2031 season, I would say, if the years were actually accurate, but I know that they necessarily aren't. But Old McCown has been fantastic, in this 3-year run. 32-10, and the majority of the losses that we actually took were actually in the first season that we had this series. So we get to our guys that are noticeably leaving our program, and something that stuck out to me was Porter Winstrid. Porter Winstrid is considering reclassification so that he can go forward and play college football a year early. Right now, he's projecting out to be an FCS caliber player. So I thought about the idea, of letting him, reclassify. But we ended up talking to him real quick to see if he would be willing to stay so that he can, ensure we get his high school diploma. And he's ready to run it back. He is ready to run it back. So we actually do get to see Porter Winstrid come back for his senior year, so that he can get a chance to maybe get onto an FBS team instead of some FCS squads. But we have a couple of more notable guys leaving. Jody Gentry is certainly one of them. He was one of our top receivers since we started this series, and was a consistent threat for the Pirates. After the first couple of years when we found our footing, this is a person that hovered around 700 to 800 yards a season and had those 50 plus catches as well. So Jody Gentry is always a consistent threat necessarily. So we love so it's going to suck to see him go. We're going to certainly hope that we can certainly find some wide receivers at the middle school level, because they might be stepping up right away. As for Matt Gimatar had a special place in my heart as well. Matt Gimatar was the starting quarterback in year number 2, but when Tahoma Thompson came on the campus, Tahoma Thompson just had all the skill sets, and it was one of those things where it was hard to keep him off the field. So Matt Gimatar really was screwed over. Could have transferred to somewhere else his senior year, but I'm glad that he didn't. Was a good mentor for Tahoma Thompson for sure. Plus, he did throw for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions this year. Don Barantine is another guy that we think about a lot. Barantine was a senior quarter, 3-year varsity letter winner. Came in and had 130 tackles total, had 3 interceptions, was always at top corner, was ready to take on the best receiving threat at any given time. It just was a good defensive back for us, even though he might have not necessarily been the fastest defensive back. He certainly knows a thing or two about the schematics of football. Just a smart player. Speaking of smart players, Quadir Johnson also qualifies as one. Quadir Johnson ends up being an 80 overall when it's all said and done. Really did not see him in year number 1, but he burst onto the scene in years 2 and 3. Didn't get to the quarterback much, but he was more of a pass coverage type of linebacker. Even though he did only have 1 interception, also knew a thing or two about flying around this field as well. Was a big impact guy. Here's a quick look at some of the other guys that are leaving the team this upcoming season. Going to be losing a good chunk of our defensive line. Beef Wellington is going to be going away. He was our top receiver in terms of receiving yards. Brand Danielson was our top tackler. RJ Valencia was our starting running back. Jake Durant started the majority of his time here. He was a 2-year starter, 3-year varsity letterman. He took a lesser role with the emergence of Miller, Joe Miller for sure. And this is the rest of the group that you got going on here. Lots of seniors leaving the team just in time. Also lost some playing time. Hardly saw the field here in year number 3. He was okay, but he was nothing to necessarily write home about either. But what truly and what legitimately made our run to the state championship truly special was that we had to take on players that were Division I caliber. For example, that Clinton team that we found a way to beat twice, they ended up having 4 players end up committing to FBS programs around the country, 3 of them on offense. The first one is, of course, Paris Brown. He ends up being one of the top prospects in the country. He ends up going to the University of Florida. Also intending on playing Division I college football was Justin Colliver, who ended up being a top 10 prospect not only at the wide receiver position, but in addition to that, also ended up being the top 10 prospect in all of high school football throughout the country. And then this guy here, Sean Coleman II, this was someone that we didn't get to see a ton of. He was stuck behind Melvin Tinsman for the Clinton Red Tornadoes, but he was an exceptional player in his own right. Ends up being a 4-star player, going to Oklahoma State, staying close to home, and he actually will have the opportunity to start at Oklahoma State right away as well. And then, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, we also had Henry Harrington that we had to deal with as well. Henry Harrington was someone that was an elite defensive player and gave us some fits in the couple of times that we did went up against this Clinton Red Tornado squad. As for other players that we went up against that did end up moving on to that FBS level, we also had Tyler Rich. Now, Tyler Rich gave our offensive line some fits when we went up against the Olaso Rams, but Tyler Rich does end up joining one of the military academies, actually. He ends up going to the Naval Academy, and he was actually a 3-star player at Olaso. For the team that we went up against in Bartlesville, actually was very surprised to see that Bartlesville only had one FBS player, and that was Dante Horn, who did burn us a couple of times for big plays. Dante Horn ended up being a 5-star wide receiver, and he goes to wide receiver U in the FBS world, and that is going to the Ohio State University. And then finally, our season opener, we went up against Jacob Hoppel in our opening game when we took on DeSoto on the road, and he ended up being a 4-star player after all. He ends up remaining relatively closer to home, and he's going to Texas A&M for his college career experience. But we will go ahead and roll on into the Season 4 title defense, and this is what our schedule does look like for season number 4, our first season of the simulation, and this is a very navigatable schedule. We actually have a more forgiving schedule than what we did last season. Actually, the only team that I see that's ranked in the top 25 is Olaso. But you'll also notice that we're not ranked in the top 25 either, even though we just won the state championship last year. But it looks like not only we did not really get better as a team, we actually look like we might be taking a little bit of a step back. See, last year we had a defense that was rated in the 80s, but we're only a 76 overall defensively. And offense really was kind of stagnant, to be honest, only a 74 overall. We do have a couple of pieces, Porter Lindstrid and Tahoma Thompson. But if you take a look at the rest of this roster, the rest of this roster doesn't scream college talent necessarily. Yes, we have Thomas Holsky and Chase Henry, but we have a lot of, average to above average high school football players on our roster. So it is going to be a little bit of a challenge to see if we can repeat here in year number 4. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the simulation, see how this team does without us having an influence in gameplay necessarily. So we made it through season number 4, and it was honestly an up and down campaign for us. Now, at the start of the year, it was a little bit of a inconsistency with new faces stepping up. We started the year just 2-3, and also shout out to Seminole. One of our coordinators went there and, had them have a very successful season. But then in the second half of the year, we really started to turn things on here. Well, we ended up going on a tear, particularly in that second half of the season. Ended up winning 4 of our next 5 games before we finished it out winning against Olaso. And it sets us up with a spring scrimmage that we'll have against Pateo, who's also a pretty good team that happens to be named the Pirates as well. But what I do want to do, though, is I wanted to take a chance to highlight our leading passer in Tahoma Thompson. Not only did he lead the team in passing yards, and yes, he didn't throw for as many passing yards as he did last season, he did throw for slightly more passing touchdowns and less interceptions. So he did take better care of my football overall. But he really took that step forward as a runner as well. Now, he was our leading rusher this season, so that kind of lets you know what our running back situation was like. But he did have 11 touchdowns on the ground, so he finishes with 42 touchdowns on the year, far more broken tackles, and he didn't fumble the ball nearly as much as he did last year. So Tahoma Thompson really took that step forward, and he has a real chance to maybe be a 1,000-yard rusher at some point in his high school career. Now, in other news, Delano Tulsa did end up being the leading receiver for your Gore Pirates this season, and he almost had 1,000 yards receiving on the year. This is a huge step up for him because he had a very reserve role, that 3-4 wide receiver last season, and now he was that number 1 guy. He really handled that challenge pretty well overall, so I do love that. Our defense did take a major step back, however. We were in some high-scoring games, and it shows in our defensive statistics, right? So, taking a look at our defensive stats real fast, so our leading solo tackler was Jamal Moore, and Jamal Moore was someone that didn't really play his first 3 years in the Gore program. This is a guy that was on JV for 3 years. Now he's here on varsity his senior year, and hey, I mean, he made the most of it, but it kind of lets you know how thin our defense was outside of Porter Lindstrid. Yeah, it was a rough year for our defense. I'm not going to lie to you. We also had some other guys take a step back. Chase Henry, for example, going from 21 sacks to less than 5. That's a really difficult pill to swallow as well. Kind of returns back to his year 1 and year 2 numbers that he did originally had. Jamal Moore was also our second leading sacks person. And then the only person that had more than one interception was Seth Randolph. Seth Randolph did end up having 2 interceptions, but nobody else had more than 1 pick. Not even Porter Lindstrid, who I was hoping he could have gone about being a little bit more of a playmaker for us, but it did look like he was hurt for much of his senior year. Hopefully it doesn't hurt his ability to play at the college level, because it looks like when he was on the field, he did absolutely make the most of those opportunities. Finally, in terms of forced fumbles, we did end up forcing a few fumbles this year. A bumvy of guys did end up getting some forced fumbles. Chris Gentry and Sean Randolph were the only 2 that had fumble recoveries. Now, speaking to the all-state players that were in the state of Oklahoma, Camden Sickhiller was named the Gatorade Player of the Year for football. He's from Norman North High School, but I also wanted to take the opportunity to take a look and see if we ended up having any all-state players this season. And so far, I'm a little bit discouraged by what I see. It looks like we didn't necessarily have any first-team players, so to speak. So the first team players do look a little bit on the short side. Not even our kicker. Hopefully we can have a little bit better luck with the second team. See if we have anybody on the second team all-state list. It seems like a lot of the same. Couldn't get Dahoma Thompson on that second team list, which does stink a little bit. And it looks like we did not have any all-state players this season, which, again, we had plenty of guys on this list for years 1 through 3. So to not have anyone on there was a little bit of a disappointment. Even taking a look at some of the freshman all-state players, the newcomers in the state of Oklahoma, kind of a lot of the same thing here, to be honest. No one really making an impact, kind of returning to the mean, it seems like. We did seem like we overachieved when we were in gameplay. It seems like we did return back to earth. But what we did end up seeing was that, we did end up seeing that Norman North is going to be your state champion this year. Now, Norman North did end up making the state playoffs back in year number 2, but the Washington Warriors, who were kind of this mid-tier program the first couple of years of this series, well, we saw them make the sectional championship in year number 3. We beat them convincingly. They got back in year number 4, and Washington makes the most of it, winning the sectional championship, making it all the way to the state final. However, it just seems like Norman North was just too much. They jump out to a 28-10 lead in the first half, and Washington could never rally back. This was a foregone conclusion, even after the first half did end up happening. But even though we just received an extension in the previous offseason and it went for 5 years, well, it seems like they are more than interested in keeping their coach for life, as they wanted us to stay for an additional 3 years after that. So, hey, we want that job security, so we are going to, of course, take it. So, we should be the head coach for the Gore Pirates for the foreseeable future. But with that being said, Porter Lindstrid, because he did end up getting hurt, I mean, that does unfortunately really hurt his chances to show that, hey, this is an FBS caliber football player, but he was still able to get some scholarships at the FCS level, and because he was able to get those scholarships at the FCS level, he is actually going to be playing his college ball at Incarnate Wood. a very solid FCS program in that lower echelon of Division 1. As for other guys of note that are leaving our team, we're losing Chase Henry, and Chase Henry was always a solid player for us, right? He was always this solid football player. Won a Tulsa Defensive Player of the Year, won a couple of other awards from Max Preps. Took that step back in year number 4, but still a very solid college career, over 30 sacks in his high school career, but he's choosing not to play in high school football, and also choosing not to do that is his mate Thomas Holsky, who did hurt himself in the second half of year number 4, and then Delano Tulsa. Delano Tulsa was a leader for us in year number 4. He did step up when he was given those opportunities, did catch for over 1,000 yards and have 14 touchdowns too. Just unfortunately, his size is limiting to him. That's why he didn't necessarily get those looks that maybe he was hoping for either to actually go play college football. Alright, so going into season number 5, as we look to try to bounce back a little bit, this is our schedule going into season number 5. And again, it's a very navigatable schedule overall. We do have a tough matchup against the Cleveland Tigers, who were kind of close to making the playoffs for the state championship back in season number 3. But other than that, this is a very navigatable schedule. I think we could take some steps in the right direction here. But at the same token, going into season number 5, we actually don't find ourselves, we don't really see us in this top 15, not in the top 20. No, we are actually not even so much as in this top 25. So it makes me wonder real quick, okay, if we're not in this top 25, where actually are we? Are we at least in the top 50? Are we even in the top 60 teams? And it looks like they have us really doubted going into this upcoming season, because you see me doing this scrolling, right? It's actually taking me a minute to find our team, but we do have and eventually find our squad. We are at 68, so we're about a middle of a road team, but not going to be easy this year. A lot of the weight is going to have to go onto Tahoma Thompson. You see that 68 overall defense, it might give us some problems this upcoming season, but let's go ahead and simulate the entirety of year number 5 and see if that holds water or not. Alright, so year number 5, as you can see on my screen, actually did go pretty well. So because season 5 went so well for us, we are actually playing in the sectional championship once again, and we're trying to come back and win our 3rd sectional / conference title in the last 4 years. But even though we probably are the favorite against Edmond Santa Fe, we are actually also ranked in the top 25 in the state of Oklahoma. We are certainly not going to be taking this Edmond Santa Fe, at least not very lightly at all. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead, do a super sim, see how things shake out. As let's go ahead and dive right into it here, man. See how we handle things out. And so far, so good. We do have a different quarterback than Tahoma Thompson at this point. Tahoma Thompson actually did end up breaking his hand during the regular season, so he tried to go for today, just isn't 100% there, at least not yet. But Josiah Plessy, one of your guys' customs that's been riding the bench the entire time, I mean, he's handling it extremely well, and we have a convincing lead against Edmond Santa Fe going into the final quarter. Let's see if we can finish the deal against Edmond Santa Fe once and for all. And it looks like we just might. I just want to kind of jump into this last game real quick. See if we see a little bit of a celebration. Final play of the game. At this point, Edmond Santa Fe has decided that they are going to just throw in that towel. They are absolutely going to throw in the towel. We are up 34-4, actually 34-5, and you know what? Let's just go ahead and celebrate from here on out. So our final record here in year number 5 does end up being, well, we end up finishing 11-3. We do lose our spring scrimmage game against Tulsa McLean. Kind of rolls in this year number 5, how I'm doing this high school dynasty. But we do have an award winner, Jake Hills, our senior kicker, I should say, Well, he had a rough year number 3, so he bounced back here in year number 5, goes 23 for 25, and gets awarded the Coles Kicker of the Year in the state of Oklahoma. And hopefully this does mean he gets an opportunity to kick in college, because if you ask me, he ultimately absolutely deserves that kind of opportunity to kick at the college level. I hope they absolutely give that to him. But we do end up seeing who wins the state championship in the state of Oklahoma, and it goes to the Clinton Red Tornadoes. This is a Red Tornadoes team that had a very difficult schedule this year. They played multiple top 25 opponents as well, and that does culminate in taking on Putnam County North. And Putnam County North just didn't have a prayer. Neither did Vian. This was a tough semifinal right here. These two games, two top 5 opponents, and Clinton just absolutely just dusts them around like a rag doll. So congratulations to Clinton for this particular season in winning year number 5. Want to take one more quick look at how we did this year, and you'll notice that Josiah Plessy actually led the team in passing yards this year, and that was because Tahoma Thompson actually was hurt for a good chunk of the season, unfortunately. Like, when he did play, he was actually very effective. He was extremely effective at quarterback, but because he missed most of the year, that absolutely does hurt. But that being said, I do love what Josiah Plessy did stepping in for the starter. Josiah Plessy finally getting some real run on the field and made the most of his opportunities. He was solid. He led us to a sectional title, our 3rd one in the last 4 years, mind you, and just did a very effective job of running the offense effectively. Now, another thing here is, once again, we did have a starting quarterback as our leading rusher, but Xavier Comstock is going to be that person that has 12 rushing touchdowns this year for Xavier Comstock. He led the team in rushing touchdowns by a long shot, and there were some other guys that did absolutely get some opportunities as well. Receivers, Caleb McCormick just burst onto the scene. Pause. Caleb McCormick, man, was a guy that did not play varsity his freshman season, but in his sophomore campaign, oh, did he make his presence felt. Nearly 1,600 yards receiving, 16 touchdowns as well. I think it's very safe to say that he has our attention now. We'll just put it that way. Ryan Houston also had 4 touchdown grabs. Samuel Lindstrid, the little brother of Porter Lindstrid, got some run as well, so you love to see the burn there. Defensively, Al Poland led the team in tackles this year, and Al Poland was a freshman. Just a brand spanking new freshman coming into our program. You do love to see that, but a fellow freshman led the team in sacks this year. That is Terrence Miller, who made the biggest impact. So a lot of impact freshmen for sure on that defensive side of the ball. That also includes some other youngsters stepping up, like Malcolm Moore, who had multiple interceptions. Seth Randolph had multiple interceptions. Johnny Landry, outside linebacker, who's a sophomore, he had multiple interceptions as well. And then our senior Isaac Smith, he was able to get an interception as well. Seth Randolph did also lead the way in forced fumbles, with guys like lockdowns. Juju Quisson, who was finally able to see the field. He was having a hard time finding the field at all, but does have a little bit of a breakout here in year number 5, being able to finally see that field a little bit. Casey Gore, another freshman, ended up with a with a good freshman campaign. Not a great one. We'd love to see him more than 1.5 sacks, but forced fumble, we're certainly not complaining about at all. We just couldn't get to those fumbles. We only recovered 2 fumbles total, so definitely have to work on that, but certainly have a lot to build off of going into season number 6. But why I was pretty excited overall to see what our Season 6 team can possibly do is because we don't have a lot of players leaving. Jake Hills actually does not get any college consideration, at least not a former scholarship offer. Hopefully he gets a chance to maybe walk on, possibly. I mean, best kicker in Oklahoma, surely there's got to be a spot for this kid. A few other players that did end up graduating. Ajax Klesson did finally get to see notable playing time the last couple of years. It was his best season his senior year with 25 pancakes and 7 blocks. JC McCoy was our primary fullback since he came up to the high school level, and you can't really decide what his impact is based off of his stats. I mean, he was not someone that necessarily touched the football very much. He only had, even in this last year, like 30 to 40 total touches in a single season, but just was the type of player that's willing to step in and do just about anything. And then a couple of other players who know, Juju Klesson finally got a chance to see the field his senior year, and then Mason Smith, who was a decent backup for us at that fullback position, actually got a ton of run in year number 5 because of some of the injuries that we experienced over the course of this season. But that means that we should be able to get significantly better as a team going into year number 6. Now, even though we might have not had anybody that ended up playing at that FBS level of football, we did take on someone that did. On that Cleveland Tigers team, for example, the tight end for Cleveland High School, well, he traded one set of Tiger uniforms for another set of Tiger uniforms. As the tight end who ends up being a 3-star player, he's actually going to go to Missouri and take part in the SEC, one of the best conferences in all of college football. So shout out to him, but we were able to contain him for quite a bit, I will say that. So with that being said, we do get our year number 6 schedule, and this should be the easiest schedule that we've had in this entire series. Now, in year number 6, we start off with some very easy non-conference opponents: MacArthur, Fairview, Drumright, our rival, and then Deer Creek, who actually was finishing the year in the top 25, and then even in our conference play, we do get, for the most part, to avoid some of the better opponents on the other side of our conference. So we don't have Edmond Santa Fe that we had to deal with in the regular season. So I feel like there's a good chance here, if we can be healthy enough, we can run the table in year number 6. Now, you would think that after the type of season that we've just had, that we would have a little bit more respect on our names, but apparently that's hard to come by. As we come into year number 6, we actually are only 56, in the preseason rankings released by OK Preps. So, gonna have to come out there and prove some people wrong. I think we are much better than that 56 ranked team in the state of Oklahoma, but in order for us to actually prove that, we got to go out here and simulate year number 6 so that we can try and prove some people wrong now. Alright, so we are once again back to the sectional championship game. We are taking on the Ada Cougars, and just wanted to take the minute to really blemish ourselves in what would be the final high school game for Tahoma Thompson. I'm really hoping Tahoma Thompson does get a chance to play up at that college level, because I certainly think he is a college quarterback, even though he may not necessarily have that college size per se, right? But that being said, man, looking forward to seeing if we could possibly repeat here as sectional champions. Probably will not be getting an invite to the state playoffs once again. We finished 9-3, so that's not good enough for us to get that state playoff consideration. But I would certainly love to finish the season strong by trying to finish the deal against this Ada Cougar squad. And look at that, first couple of drives, we just go to work against this Ada squad. We end up taking a 21-0 lead quickly against the Ada Cougars, man. Like, we are not messing around. We are not playing these games at all. And matter of fact, our first 4 drives end up being touchdowns, and it took it for almost the entire half just for this Ada squad to get on the board. And it just lets you know exactly what I needed to know. We should have been ranked, man. We truly should have been ranked this entire time. But hold up now, Ada might be trying to make a little bit of a run here. I'm not gonna lie to you right now. Ada trying to make things a little bit more on the interesting side at this moment. We're up by 15 though, so we should be good here. I just want to go ahead and see, that final play of the game. As we actually don't run out the clock. That's interesting. But all right, here we go. First and goal situation. Let's see if our guys can go ahead and punch it in. Gonna just enjoy it from like the coach cam standpoint. And you know what? We actually just decide to go ahead and be, a little bit better sports. We're just gonna go ahead and kneel it out. But a worthy victory for our guys. We end up winning 45-30. And we repeat as sectional/conference champions. Plus, we've won the sectional championship 3 of the last 4 years, building quite the dynasty here at Gore High School. So once again, we actually do finish 11-3, and we finish as a top 25 team in the state of Oklahoma as well. So a good season, not necessarily a great season since we didn't make the state playoffs once again. Don't mind being, perennial sectional champions, though. We do have yet another award winner. This time, it is our wide receiver, Caleb McCormick. One of your guys' customs that was, again, a reserve player, during that state championship run. Well, he's been absolutely killing it for us. He puts up even more yards, even more touchdowns than what he did in the previous season. And I didn't even think that was possible. But yet, here we are, barbecue on the titties. Caleb McCormick, one of the best wide receivers in the state of Oklahoma. I'm sure he's going to get plenty of college attention. Just don't know how high of a level that's going to be. But with that being said, once again, the Clinton Red Tornadoes make it to being those state champions. Once again, that is another state championship for Clinton. It makes me wonder if, beating Clinton in that state championship game back in year number 3, did we just delay a dynasty? Because Clinton is certainly putting together a dynasty here in our little Oklahoma football universe. So congratulations to Clinton. They did end up moving forward and winning that state championship once again. Quick look around to see what's happening around the country. And again, Tahoma Thompson, just these last couple of years, he's really struggled with injuries. He has not been very healthy, but played a little bit more than what he did last year. Threw for 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Just would love to have seen him be a little bit more healthy this time around, because his rushing numbers did absolutely fall off a cliff in his last 2 years here at Gore High School. Still a productive year when he was on the field, but just wasn't on the field nearly as much. But Joshua Plessy got the chance to play, and man, was Joshua Plessy a breakout. Arguably, and I would say he is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the state of Oklahoma. Joshua Plessy ends up throwing for 31 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, nearly 2,800 yards. His rushing numbers, not too bad either. Over 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Joshua Plessy might be getting some college attention himself, or at least I would hope so, given that he's had 2 productive years in a row. Taking a look around to see general not award winners, but stat leaders. Scott Tanner was our leading rusher with over 800 yards on the year. More of a quarterback-centric offense that we're running at this point at Gore High School. Caleb McCormick, the leading receiver at Gore in Oklahoma, and it's not even close. He has a 300-yard gap, so you love to see that. Goodman was our leading tackler. He had 42 solo tackles, which is good for top 50. Sacks, Adam Poland, one of our younger defensive linemen, led the group this year with 6.5 sacks. Kind of what I expect from my defense. Still a younger defense. Hopefully another year of maturation. We could have a good defense this up in year number 7. The last year that we're doing this sim, by the way. Sean Randolph, though, tied the state of Oklahoma for most interceptions. Sean Randolph really had a breakout campaign with 6 interceptions. And Sean Randolph did that as a senior. So nice breakout campaign for the senior safety, who spent some time playing at linebacker, by the way, in year number 3. So we go and see what kind of losses are we going to incur. And this is a surprise. Tahoma Thompson is not going to go and play college football. I was actually extremely surprised by this, but I guess, for him, his body was starting to break down from all the injuries that he had the last couple of years, and just done with the game of football. Nothing wrong with that. Thought that possibly Joshua Plessy or even an OJ Mannings would have had a chance to play some college football, but I don't know, there might be some kind of bias against Gore High School. I'm not really sure. You can let me know down in the comment section. Only other player of note that we are going to miss is Ryan Houston, and Ryan Houston had a decent high school career. Not a great one, but a good one. Ended up with over 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns in 3 years of varsity football. He was a 3-year letterman, so a good career for Ryan Houston. Just a good high school football player, not a great high school football player per se. A lot of your guys' customs do end up graduating at this point. Seth Randolph, who really had that breakout year, was named All-State. 6 interceptions is nothing to laugh at. Wilson Charter did not play much in gameplay, but did get to start in his last 2 years of varsity. Sean Randolph, Seth and Sean. This is Sean Randolph. The other Randolph had a decent high school career as well. Sagamoto Sachi was our custom punter. Didn't hear from the punter very much because we didn't have to punt the ball too many times. That's always never a bad problem to have. You got lockdowns. You have Chris Gentry graduating. Josh James is here as well. And then you have Scott Tanner on top of that too. Tykeem Bonnet Jr. I thought was going to be someone that was going to be a lot better. He was varsity all 4 years, but, never really lived up to his potential, to be honest with you. We're also losing a couple of guys to playing times. Trent Miller is going to be moving to a different area. And then Terrence Miller is actually going to go to the IMG Academy. Best of luck to both of those guys. I'm not going to argue with either of those those prospects. Jaheed Fala was a guy that never really saw the field. He was varsity, but he spent more time on the JV, to be honest. He wasn't a very talented football player, to put it nicely, but he was a emotional leader. He was one of those locker room guys for sure. So going into the final year of this kind of 4-year simulation, this is what our roster is going to be looking like. Now, it's a lot different than what we did in gameplay, but whoever is going to be the starting quarterback for the Gore Pirates after the Tahoma Thompson era does come to an end, because Plass, who was also a senior, at least he's going to have some decent weapons to work with. Ryan Logan, Paul Small, Samuel Lindstrid, and of course, most importantly, Caleb McCormick. The weapons are at least going to be there. I'm really curious to see how we end up doing as a team this upcoming season, just because, we have a lot of guys that are in the, high 70 overalls, mid 70 overalls. We don't have a great team. Looks like Dane, who's going to be starting at quarterback? Looks like possibly Rodney Roberts might be starting at quarterback. He's moved in from the Louisiana area. Looks like he'll start for us right away, followed by Charles Jenkins and Dane Martin. Jason Covington is a middle schooler, so he's working with high school because he has that potential in him. But I'm really curious to see what our schedule is looking like. I'm hoping that we have a similar schedule than what we had last year. If we do, I think we'll be okay. Okay, so this is going to be our schedule, and it's actually not similar to what we had last year. Matter of fact, our strength of schedule is actually a little bit more difficult. We do have Class in SAS, and Class in SAS is a solid team, spent some time in the top 25. We start off ranked in the top 25, so that's cool. Bridge Creek is in here, and, Bridge Creek, actually interesting about them is that Bridge Creek took our offensive coordinator. So the new head coach of Bridge Creek was the offensive coordinator for us for, a few years in this simulation. So that'll be an interesting rematch to see how that turns out. We don't have anybody, at least on our schedule, that is ranked in the top 25. So if we can get through our non-conference slate relatively unscathed, I really think we could possibly make a run. But we do need some development at the quarterback position, and of course, our defense does need to continue to get better every single week. So I took a closer look at our preseason polls going into this season, and while we are ranked, though, it's very interesting that we're ranked in the top 25, because like we're just a 75 overall team. Granted, I'm using a tool that makes progression and regression also being a thing a little bit more realistic. But looking at some of these teams around us, I mean, there's quite a few teams around us, both ahead and also behind us, that have a better roster on paper than what we have utilized ourselves. So very interesting to see that we have that kind of thing going. We'll see how this year 7 sim comes. Hopefully we can be able to achieve yet another double-digit win season. Alright guys, so we end up going relatively unscathed in non-conference action, but we had a little bit more issues when we got into conference play. We finished the year 9-4, and there's certainly some good in here, actually mostly good. We help our new offensive coordinator get revenge on class and SAS, and then we also beat our old offensive coordinator, who's now the head coach at Bridge Creek. Bridge Creek did not finish above 500 for the year. We did take some close losses in there, though. We lost a close game to end it 24-17 on the road, mind you. We also took a close loss to Piedmont. Piedmont ended up moving on, and I believe they got the opportunity to play for a sectional championship. Not sure if they actually won the sectional championship, but they were certainly there. And then we took this 10-point loss to Millwood that kind of sealed our fates. But we do finish the year on a mostly strong note. Beat Zapupa, played close to Edmond Santa Fe, and then we finished the year out beating Bishop McGuinness in the spring scrimmage game. We beat them 38-21. So 9-4, didn't quite get there to that 10-win season, but we established ourselves as a very good program, and there's absolutely no question that we're in a much better spot now than what this program was in when we first took over 7 years ago. And speaking of how we did during our time at Gore High School, I mean, even including the simulation, we became one of the winningest head coaches in Gore football history. You know, during the 7 years that we've been at Gore High School, and who's to say we can't be here much longer, we end up going 71-25. This is not a bad run at all. This is a run that culminates in 4 sectional championships, a state championship as well, and not to mention we went 5-2 in our spring scrimmage games during these 7 years as well. So we molded ourselves into a very good program, and while I wish we sent more people up to the college level, and who's to say that we haven't, still got to check to see those remaining players that left, we've built ourselves in a developmental program. We built ourselves into a system that has built us and provided us with the opportunity to always be in games regardless of who happens to be on our roster. Now, with that said, we do find out who the new state champion is, and there is going to be actually a new state champion, right? So Jenks actually does get over the top. They beat Holland Hall in the state championship. It was a relatively close game, but Jenks was ultimately able to pull it out 38-28. That does end up being your final score. I believe this is the first time that Jenks won the state title in this series, probably, and of course with it being the last year of the sim, the only time Jenks will win a state title in this series. But hey, at least we're one of a few teams out there that did end up hoisting that trophy that you see on your screen. But with that said, we dig a little bit deeper into the stats, and this kid that we got from Miracle, Louisiana, oh baby, this kid could be a star. This kid actually could be a star in the making. Maybe not Tahoma Thompson good, but this could be a good player. But he ends up going with 30 touchdown passes, 2,600 yards passing, coming onto campus. He immediately won the starting job, which is not always easy to do, transferring into a new school. But hey, sometimes, you know, right place in the right time. Rodney Roberts also ran for more than 750 yards, so he ends with 39 total touchdowns and did a pretty good job taking care of my football. Plus, he has 2 more years of eligibility remaining. However, running the ball was not necessarily our strong suit. It hasn't really been a strong suit since we've gotten out of the gameplay portion of this series. Anthony Woods is our leading rusher. He had over 800 yards. Rodney Roberts again being our second leading rusher. The only other person that had multiple touchdowns, though, is Joseph Woods. Joseph Woods had 5 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. Wasn't too shabby for a backup running back. We'll see if he gets more opportunities down the line and possibly challenge Anthony Woods if he puts in the work in the offseason. You know, nothing is certainly guaranteed on my team. Now, for the receivers, Caleb McCormick did end up taking a step back. It's not as good as his previous 2 seasons, but he still managed to put up a 1,000-yard campaign, and he puts up one of the most prolific stats in Gore High School history. You know, he has the record for most catches. He has the record for most touchdowns. He has the record for most receiving yards. He's just that guy. He is absolutely that guy. Caleb McCormick with over 300 receptions, 4,400 yards, 45 touchdowns in the 3 years that he was in varsity. How he was not varsity his freshman year, I really don't know what to tell you, but Caleb McCormick was absolutely that guy. I'm interested to see if he gets the opportunity to play college football. Now, his teammate Samuel Winstrid. Now, Samuel Winstrid is not as good as his big brother Porter. Now, granted, Porter did end up playing Division I football. He's been getting some good run at Incarnate Wood at this point. Samuel is not a bad player, though, by any means. You know, maybe not a college prospect per se, but last few years, he's put up good numbers, able to put up nearly 2,000 total yards, 16 receiving touchdowns. It's really not that bad. Paul Small also shows a lot of potential as a freshman. Ryan Logan has arguably his best year, really took off his senior year, finally figured it out a little bit of a breakout, a solid wide receiver at high school, but probably not going to get any college looks. Luke Hutchinson, our backup tight end, had multiple touchdown grabs, and then Dane Riggs, another senior wide receiver, also ended up with multiple touchdown grabs as well. For our blocking, our best blocker this year was Alan Clemens, which I was actually surprised about because he's only a 68 overall. The person that was in charge of the most sacks, though, was our senior Terrence Carrington, a 79 overall senior, one of our captains on the offensive line. He was actually the biggest liability on the offensive line when it comes to pass protection, which is something that I'm actually pretty surprised about. We do have a lot more pancakes than sacks, so I can't complain too much. Now, defensively, Johnny Landry did end up being our leading tackler this year, and he wasn't even remotely close. The only one that was maybe a little bit closer was Chris Brown, Al Paulin, Ryan Goodman, and Matt Gonzalez. Nobody had more than 5 sacks this year, but it was a bunch of different guys that did end up getting to his quarterback. Matt Gonzalez did have to be our lead sack recipient with 4.5 sacks. JD Butler, though, was our leader in getting those interceptions. JD Butler had 4 total interceptions. Malcolm Moore, the custom that's on this team, one of a few customs that's left at this point, did also make a couple of interception grabs as well. Forced fumbles, Al Poland led the team in forcing fumbles. He had 3 forced fumbles this year. A couple of other guys that had multiple forced fumbles was Johnny Landry, Malcolm Moore, again the custom, and the junior Casey Gore. Did a much better job getting those fumbles. However, Chris Brown and Malcolm Moore having multiple fumble recoveries over the course of the season. Alright, so this is the final batch of players that are leaving us here, and I'm actually surprised that we don't have any college players on our team, right? Like, I understand, like, some of these players, you know, being in here, right? But for others, particularly for Caleb McCormick, I am shocked that Caleb McCormick did not get college looks, or maybe he just doesn't want to play college football, oddly enough. Maybe he likes college football, like the idea of playing more, but doesn't love the games necessarily. So I was really shocked by that. A couple of other guys that are leaving the program. Ethan Warren, I haven't touched up on. Ethan Warren was always a reserve player, right? He was someone that, yes, he knew the playbook, but he wasn't a very naturally talented wide receiver, right? But was a good mentor for the other younger players that are on our varsity roster, but he never really stepped on the field, unfortunately. There was one player that thought about reclassifying, and it's Al Poland. Al Poland has put up some decent stats, but it's not like great stats, right? So I am actually going to ask him to stay for his senior year, and he's going to come back for his senior year. So if we were to do another year of this, we would have a very quality defensive lineman, and I think we could have a decent can of guys on the defensive side of the ball. But that will not only wrap up this episode, but it will also wrap up this series as well. This has been an absolute joy to do, to be able to find this mod. And again, I want to give a special shout out to the people over at the Oklahoma High School Football mod for putting this thing together. This was really fun to kind of experience high school football in the state of Oklahoma. I'm certainly going to look around here over the next few months to see if there is some other high school mods for other states that are completed and ready to go, and if there is, maybe we explore those while we wait for EA college football to come out. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments in that regard. But I hope you guys not only enjoyed this episode, but enjoy this series, because it's been really fun to do on my end. With that being said, if you enjoyed this final episode, make sure you go ahead and smack that like button. If you're curious with what's to come next out of this channel and you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button, because we got a bunch of things planned on this channel here in the coming days, and you certainly don't want to miss out on that. Some things that maybe I haven't done in a little bit. So that being said, this is John J Gaming on the mic signing off, but hoping you guys are out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.